The sun had just begun to rise over the vast savanna, casting a golden hue across the landscape. Birds chirped melodiously, welcoming the new day. In the heart of the village of Ndlovu, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, life stirred slowly. The villagers, known for their resilience and unity, prepared for another day of toil and tradition. Among them was Kofi, a young man of 20 summers, known for his inquisitive nature and unyielding spirit. He lived with his grandmother, Nana Ama, a revered elder and the village's custodian of oral history. Their modest hut, adorned with intricate carvings and symbols, stood at the edge of the village, overlooking the river that provided sustenance and stories. Kofi's days were filled with chores fetching water, tending to the goats, and assisting in the communal fields. Yet his nights were reserved for stories. Nana Ama, with her eyes that held centuries of wisdom, would recount tales of ancestors, spirits, and the land's secrets. These stories ignited a fire within Kofi, a yearning to explore beyond the familiar. One evening, as the village gathered around the central fire for the monthly storytelling, an unfamiliar figure approached. Clad in a cloak of deep indigo, the stranger's presence silenced the murmurs. He introduced himself as Malik, a traveler from the northern desert seeking knowledge and connection. Malik spoke of distant lands, of cities where buildings touched the sky, and of machines that moved without animals. The villagers listened in awe, their imaginations stretched beyond the horizons they knew. Kofi, however, felt a mix of wonder and restlessness. The world Malik described resonated with the dreams he dared not voice. After the gathering, Kofi approached Malik, eager to learn more. They spoke late into the night, discussing cultures, philosophies, and the essence of identity. Malik, recognizing Kofi's thirst for knowledge, gifted him a small leather-bound journal. "Document your thoughts, your experiences," he advised. "Your story is as significant as any." Inspired, Kofi began to write. His entries started with daily observations, but soon delved into reflections on tradition, change, and the future. He questioned the rituals he participated in, the roles assigned by birth, and the possibilities that lay beyond the village. Nana Ama noticed the shift in her grandson. One morning, she confronted him, her tone gentle yet firm. "Kofi, the stories I share are not just tales, they are the threads that bind us. Why do you seek to unravel them?" Kofi hesitated before replying, "Grandmother, I cherish our heritage, but I also feel a pull towards understanding the world beyond. Can't I honor our past while exploring new paths?" Nana Ama studied him, her gaze penetrating. "Balance is key. Remember, a tree without roots cannot stand." Weeks passed, and Malik prepared to continue his journey. Before departing, he offered Kofi an invitation to join him. The proposition stirred a whirlwind of emotions. The allure of discovery clashed with the comfort of familiarity. That night, Kofi sat by the river, the journal on his lap. He pondered his choices, the potential consequences, and the dreams that beckoned. As dawn approached, he made his decision, one that would set him on a path of self-discovery, challenges, and growth. The sun rose earlier than usual that morning, peeking over the horizon and painting the sky with a blend of gold and crimson. The village of Ndlovu awoke to the sounds of roosters crowing, children's laughter, and the rhythmic pounding of pestles and wooden mortars. The scent of freshly baked flatbread wafted through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of dew-kissed grass. Kofi's heart beat faster than ever before. Today was the day he would leave behind the only home he had ever known. He had told Nana Amma the night before that he had decided to accompany Malik on his journey. She had sat silently, the lines on her face deepening, but her eyes betraying a flicker of both pride and sorrow. She had whispered, "May your path be guided by the ancestors, my child. Remember who you are." He had spent the rest of the night preparing, gathering the few belongings he would need: a change of clothes, a water skin, the leather-bound journal Malik had given him, and a small wooden carving of a lion, a symbol of strength and courage given to him by his late father. As he packed, the sounds of the village seemed to fade, replaced by the persistent drumbeat of his own heartbeat. Malik arrived at dawn, his presence as calm and assured as the night sky. His camel, tall and dignified, carried supplies and gifts he had gathered from his travels. Malik smiled at Kofi, eyes reflecting wisdom and patience. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice steady. Kofi nodded, though his stomach twisted in knots. He glanced back at the hut where Nana Amma sat, her figure framed by the doorway. She raised her hand in blessing, and he bowed his head respectfully. The path before him stretched into the unknown, but it was a path he felt compelled to walk. As they left Ndlovu, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows on the earth. Kofi turned once to see the village recede into the distance, its thatched roofs and clay walls blending with the landscape. The familiar sounds grew faint, replaced by the rustle of the wind in the grass and the occasional call of a hawk overhead. They traveled in silence for some time, each step taking Kofi farther from the world he had always known. The rhythm of the camel's gait was steady, a comforting cadence amidst the uncertainty. Malik led the way, his eyes scanning the horizon as if seeking signs in the shifting sands. Eventually, Malik spoke, his voice low but clear. "You are leaving much behind, Kofi. It is not an easy thing to do." Kofi hesitated before replying, his voice tinged with doubt. "I know, but something inside me says that I must. There is more to the world than what I have seen, more to learn than what I have been taught." Malik nodded approvingly. "Curiosity is a gift, but it is also a burden. It drives us forward, but it can also lead us into shadows we are not prepared to face." Kofi pondered these words as they continued their journey. The path grew rougher, the ground uneven and dotted with rocks and dry grass. Occasional clusters of acacia trees offered shade, their branches twisted like ancient dancers. At midday, they stopped to rest under one such tree. Malik unpacked dried fruit, nuts, and a small piece of salted meat. They ate in silence, the air heavy with the scent of the wild. Kofi's mind wandered to the stories Nana Amma had told him of spirits that roamed the land, of ancestors who watched from the beyond. He wondered if they were watching him now, guiding his steps. After they had eaten, Malik leaned back against the tree, his face contemplative. "Kofi," he said softly, "tell me about your home. What is it that you leave behind?" Kofi took a deep breath, the memories flooding in like a river after the rains. "I leave behind my grandmother, Nana Amma. She is the soul of our family, the keeper of our stories. I leave behind my friends, the laughter, the festivals, the dances under the moon. I leave behind the smell of the river at dawn and the taste of my mother's stew. I leave behind the comfort of knowing who I am." Malik listened, his eyes fixed on Kofi with an intensity that made Kofi feel both exposed and understood. "And what do you seek?" Malik asked. Kofi paused, choosing his words carefully. I seek knowledge. I seek to understand the world beyond my village. I want to know why things are the way they are, why some people have so much and others so little. I want to see the cities you spoke of, to learn their secrets, but most of all, I want to know who I can become." Malik nodded, his eyes reflecting approval and a touch of sorrow. "You seek wisdom, Kofi, but wisdom comes with a price. It will challenge you, break you, and rebuild you. You must be ready for that." Kofi's jaw tightened. "I am ready." They continued their journey, leaving the shade of the acacia behind. The landscape shifted as they moved deeper into the plains. The ground was cracked and dry, the air thick with heat and the promise of rain that might never come. The wind carried the scent of distant fires, hinting at villages unknown and stories untold. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they came upon a small settlement, a cluster of huts surrounded by makeshift fences. Children played in the dust, their laughter bright against the weary air. Women carried baskets balanced on their heads, their steps graceful despite the burdens they bore. Malik led Kofi to the village elder, a stooped man with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that held the weight of years. The elder greeted them warmly, offering water and a place to rest. That night, they sat around a small fire, the flames dancing like spirits in the night. Malik shared stories of his travels, tales of deserts where the sand sang in the wind, and of rivers that carved canyons deep and wide. Kofi listened, his eyes wide, his heart open. He felt both small and infinite, a single thread in the vast tapestry of the world. As the fire burned low and the stars claimed the sky, he opened his journal and began to write, his hand steady despite the trembling inside him. He wrote of the journey so far, the farewells, the doubts, the wonders, and of the dreams that still burned within him. He wrote of the people he had met, the kindness of strangers, and the wisdom of the old. He wrote of Malik, the man who had shown him that the world was both bigger and smaller than he had ever imagined. When he finished, he closed the journal and held it to his chest. He looked at Malik, who sat in quiet contemplation. "Thank you," Kofi whispered, "for showing me the way." Malik smiled, his eyes reflecting the fire's glow. "The way is yours to walk, Kofi. I am only a guide. Your story is waiting to be written." As Kofi lay down that night under a sky ablaze with stars, he felt a sense of peace. The journey had just begun, but already he had learned that every step, every choice, carried the weight of destiny. And though the path ahead was uncertain, he knew he would walk it with purpose, guided by the whispers of the ancestors and the strength of his own heart. Morning broke with a gentle touch of light across the horizon, washing away the final shadows of the night. Kofi woke with a sense of urgency thrumming in his veins. He lay beneath the thatched roof of a small guest hut in the village they had found the night before, the air heavy with the scent of clay and grass. The voices of women singing in the distance wove themselves into the dawn, creating a rhythm that felt ancient and unbreakable. Malik was already awake, seated near the fire pit, his gaze fixed on the embers that glowed softly beneath a layer of ash. Kofi watched him for a moment, wondering how many sunrises Malik had seen from 100 different places. When Malik finally spoke, his voice was steady and calm. "Kofi, today we travel deeper into lands few have seen. There are people there who do not know of the cities or the politics that weigh down the world beyond. They live by different rhythms, and they guard their secrets well." Kofi sat up, brushing sleep from his eyes. His heart beat faster, a mix of anticipation and worry. "Are they dangerous?" he asked. Malik shook his head slowly. "No more than any of us are when our ways are threatened. Respect is the key, Kofi. Listen more than you speak. Watch with your heart as well as your eyes." They shared a simple meal of roasted plantain and dried meat before Malik rose and gathered their belongings. The camel, a patient and solemn creature, carried their supplies with an air of silent endurance. Kofi adjusted the straps on his pack and glanced once more at the village, where children played near the well, their laughter filling the air like birdsong. As they left, a small group of villagers watched, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and caution. Kofi nodded politely, his eyes lingering on a young girl with a bright red scarf tied around her hair. She watched him with eyes as deep as the river. He wondered what stories she would tell of the travelers who passed through her world. The sun climbed higher, and the land began to change. The grass grew taller and denser, dotted with wildflowers and small shrubs. Birds with brilliant feathers darted among the branches, their songs sharp and clear. Kofi's steps grew more confident as the rhythm of the walk settled into his bones. Malik walked beside him, his staff tapping lightly on the ground. "Every place has its own spirit," Malik said, his tone thoughtful. "If you listen closely, you can hear the land speak. The winds carry stories of battles and celebrations, of grief and hope." Kofi tilted his head, trying to catch the sound of these stories. The wind did indeed whisper, but its language was too old for him to decipher. Yet he felt its presence, a subtle thread that bound him to the earth and everything that had come before. By midday, the heat pressed down with a heavy hand, making the air shimmer like a mirage. Malik called for a rest under the wide branches of an ancient baobab tree, its roots sprawling like the arms of a giant. They sat in its shade, sharing water from their skins and chewing dried figs. Kofi leaned back against the rough bark and closed his eyes. The journey had already begun to change him. He felt stronger, more aware of the world's vastness. He also felt the ache of leaving his grandmother behind, her voice a memory that drifted on the wind. He wished she could see him now, wished he could share every new sight with her. A sudden sound broke his reverie. Malik had risen, his eyes fixed on the distance. "We have company," he said quietly. Kofi followed his gaze and saw a group of figures emerging from the grassland. At first, they seemed like shadows, but as they drew closer, their forms became clear. Men and women in loose robes of earth tones, their faces partially covered by cloths that protected them from the dust and sun. They approached with a calm, deliberate pace. The leader, a tall woman with eyes the color of storm clouds, stopped a few paces away and studied them carefully. Malik stepped forward and bowed his head in greeting. "Peace to you," he said, his voice even. The woman regarded him for a long moment before replying. "Peace to you, traveler. What brings you so far into our lands?" Malik did not hesitate. "We seek understanding. We wish to learn and to share. We bring respect, not harm." The woman's eyes softened slightly. "Words are easy," she said, her tone testing, "but trust is not." Kofi stepped forward, his voice trembling but sincere. "We mean no harm," he said. "We are students of the world, seeking to know its heart." For a moment, the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then the woman nodded. "Very well," she said. "You may enter our camp, but remember this. Here, the land speaks as loud as the people. Listen well." They followed her through the tall grass to a small settlement nestled among a cluster of trees. Simple shelters of wood and woven grass stood in a wide circle, smoke rising from small fires. Children played with sticks and stones, while older men and women worked with quiet focus, weaving baskets and shaping clay. Malik and Kofi were led to a shaded area where they were offered water and a place to sit. The woman introduced herself as Zuri, the daughter of the settlement's elder. Her presence commanded respect, and Kofi found himself drawn to her confidence. As they spoke, Kofi listened to her describe the ways of her people. They lived by the cycles of the seasons, planting, harvesting, and celebrating according to the ancient rhythms of the earth. They traded with nearby villages, but they guarded their customs fiercely. Outsiders were rare, and trust was earned, not given. Malik shared stories of his travels, speaking of cities that reached for the sky and roads that stretched farther than the eye could see. Zuri listened, her eyes sharp, but Kofi sensed that she measured every word, weighing its truth. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the village gathered around a central fire. Drums began to beat, their rhythm a call to the ancestors. Dancers stepped forward, their bodies moving with grace and power, telling stories with every motion. Kofi felt the beat in his chest, a reminder of home, of festivals that lit up the night. He watched Zuri as she rose to dance, her movements fluid and strong. Her feet seemed to barely touch the ground, her arms drawing shapes in the air that spoke of love and loss, of hope and fear. When she finished, the firelight caught the sweat on her brow, and she stood tall, unbowed. Later, as the embers cooled, Kofi found himself sitting beside her. "Your dance," he said quietly. "It was like a story." She smiled, a small curve of her lips that held both pride and sadness. "It is a story," she replied. "It is the story of my people, of who we were, who we are, and who we may yet be." Kofi nodded, his heart full. "I want to learn that story," he said. "I want to carry it with me." Zuri studied him, her gaze deep and searching. "Then listen well," she said softly, "for the story is not just in the dance. It is in the way we walk, the way we speak, the way we live. It is in the way we honor the land and each other." He listened, his mind open, his heart willing. In that moment, he felt a bond form, fragile but strong, between himself and this place. He knew that his journey had only just begun, but already it had changed him in ways he could not yet understand. That night he wrote in his journal, his pen scratching out words that carried the weight of the day. He wrote of Zuri, of her dance, of the fire that had burned with stories older than memory. He wrote of Malik's wisdom, of the people's strength, of the land's voice that whispered beneath the wind. And as he closed the journal, he whispered a quiet promise to himself. He would carry these stories, these lessons, wherever his path led. He would honor them, not just in words, but in the way he lived, the way he chose, the way he became. Malik sat across the fire, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "You are becoming, Kofi," he said, his voice steady. "Every step you take shapes you. Every choice you make defines you. Remember that." Kofi nodded, the words sinking deep into his bones. "I will remember," he replied. And as the night spread its cloak of stars across the sky, he felt the call of the journey ahead. It was a call he could not deny, for it was not just his journey anymore. It was the journey of every story he had gathered, every soul he had met, every lesson he had learned. Tomorrow, they would walk deeper into the heart of the unknown. But tonight, he rested in the knowledge that he was not alone, that he was part of something greater, something eternal. The dawn came softly, its light creeping through the branches and dancing on the packed earth of the settlement. Kofi woke to the murmur of voices outside his shelter, the scent of cooking fires wafting through the air. The villagers were already at work, moving through their daily rhythms with a grace that spoke of deep familiarity with the land. Malik stood at the edge of the clearing, his eyes distant as he watched the horizon. Kofi joined him, his steps light but eager. Malik nodded at the greeting, his expression unreadable. "Today is the day," Malik said, his voice low. "Today we learn whether our intentions are enough to bridge the gap between us and them." Kofi felt a tingle of anticipation. "What do you mean?" he asked. Malik turned to him, his gaze sharp. "Trust, Kofi. It is a fragile thing, easy to shatter and hard to mend. The people here have given us the gift of their hospitality, but to truly be accepted, we must prove ourselves worthy of their trust." Kofi thought of Zuri, of her dance, of the way her eyes had measured him like a scale. He felt both honored and intimidated by the weight of her expectations. "What must we do?" he asked. Before Malik could answer, Zuri approached. She wore a simple wrap of deep green, her hair tied back, her expression calm yet serious. She carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth, which she held out to Malik. "This is for you," she said, "and for the boy. Today you will walk with us into the sacred lands. You will see what few outsiders have seen. But know this, the land itself will judge you as much as we will." Malik accepted the bundle with a small bow. "We are honored," he said, his tone sincere. Zuri met Kofi's gaze, her eyes unflinching. "Respect the land, the spirits, and each other," she said. "If you do not, you will not return the same." Kofi swallowed hard. "I understand," he said. Zuri turned and led them toward the edge of the village, where a small group of villagers waited. They were all dressed in similar wraps, their faces painted with lines of white clay that curved across their foreheads and down their cheeks. Kofi felt his heart beat faster as he followed them, each step carrying him deeper into a place that felt older than memory. They walked for hours, the sun climbing higher and higher until the heat pressed down like a living thing. The trees grew sparser, giving way to tall grasses that whispered secrets on the wind. Birds called overhead, their songs sharp and bright. The villagers walked in silence, their footsteps sure and steady, their eyes scanning the land with a reverence that Kofi found humbling. At midday, they reached a large clearing where a single, massive baobab tree stood. Its trunk was wide enough to shelter a dozen people, its branches reaching skyward like arms seeking the sun. The villagers gathered around its base, forming a circle of quiet anticipation. Zuri stepped forward, her hands resting on the tree's ancient bark. "This is where our people come to speak to the spirits," she said, her voice carrying on the breeze. "It is a place of truth. Lies do not survive here." Malik nodded, his eyes respectful. "We seek only the truth," he said. Zuri's gaze shifted to Kofi. "Then you will face it," she said. She stepped closer, holding out a small bowl carved from dark wood. Inside was a thick liquid the color of clay. "Drink," she said. "It will open your heart and mind to the voices of this place." Kofi hesitated, his stomach churning. He looked at Malik, who met his gaze with calm resolve. "You must trust the process," Malik said. "It is the only way." With trembling hands, Kofi accepted the bowl. The liquid smelled of earth and roots, ancient and raw. He brought it to his lips and drank, the taste bitter and sharp, leaving a tingling trail down his throat. At first, nothing happened. Then the world began to shift. The colors deepened, the sounds sharpened. The tree's bark seemed to pulse with a heartbeat he could feel in his own chest. Kofi sank to his knees, his breath quick and shallow. Voices rose in the wind, soft but insistent. He heard laughter and weeping, songs and prayers, all woven together in a tapestry of sound that wrapped around him like a cloak. Images flashed behind his eyes, children playing in the dust, a woman pounding grain, an old man carving a staff from a fallen branch. Each image carried with it a weight of memory, of longing, of connection. He saw Zuri dancing in the firelight, her feet leaving trails of light on the earth. He saw Malik standing in the ruins of a village, his eyes filled with tears that would not fall. He saw his grandmother's hands, gnarled and strong, weaving stories into the threads of her shawl. A single word echoed in his mind: belonging. Kofi's breath caught. Tears welled in his eyes, and he felt the earth beneath him, the sky above him, the pulse of life that connected all things. He saw the fragile threads that tied him to this place, to these people, to Malik, to himself. The visions faded, leaving him trembling but whole. He looked up at Zuri, who watched him with eyes full of understanding. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Everything," Kofi whispered. "I saw everything that makes us who we are. The pain, the joy, the struggle, the hope." Zuri nodded slowly. "Then you have passed the first test," she said. "You have seen the heart of this place. Now you must live it." Malik placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder, his touch grounding. "You did well," he said, "but the journey is not yet complete." They rested beneath the tree, sharing water and quiet conversation. The villagers spoke in low voices, their words flowing like the river. Kofi listened, his heart open, absorbing every lesson, every nuance. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Zuri stood and faced them. "The spirits have spoken," she said. "You are welcome here. But know this, your path is now tied to ours. What you do, what you say, will ripple through our lives like a stone in the river." Kofi nodded, the weight of her words settling in his chest. "I will honor that," he said. She smiled, a small, sad smile. "Then come," she said. "There is still much to learn." They returned to the village as the first stars appeared, the sky deepening to a rich indigo. Fires burned in the center of the settlement, their smoke curling into the night air. The villagers gathered around, their faces illuminated by the glow. Zuri led Kofi and Malik to the center, where an old man sat, his hair white as bone, his eyes sharp and clear. He wore a cloak of woven grass and beads that caught the firelight like jewels. "This is my grandfather," Zuri said. "He is the elder of our people. His voice carries the wisdom of generations." The elder regarded Kofi with a gaze that felt like it could see every secret he carried. "You have walked far to reach this place," he said, his voice low and strong. "And yet, the hardest steps lie ahead." Kofi swallowed hard. "What must I do?" he asked. The elder leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You must live among us," he said. "Learn our ways, share in our work, eat our food, sleep beneath our sky. Only then will you understand what it means to be part of this land." Kofi nodded, his heart pounding. "I will," he said. The elder's gaze softened, and he reached out a hand to rest on Kofi's head. Then, let the journey continue, he said. That night, Kofi lay beneath the stars, his mind alive with questions and hopes. Malik sat nearby, his silhouette outlined by the fading embers of the fire. "How do you feel?" Malik asked. Kofi turned to him, his eyes bright. "I feel connected," he said. "Like every breath I take is part of something bigger." Malik smiled, a rare and genuine smile that lit his face. "Then you are on the right path," he said. They sat in silence, the night wrapping around them like a blanket. The sounds of the village drifted on the breeze. Laughter, song, the soft murmur of conversation. Kofi felt the land's heartbeat beneath him, steady and ancient. He knew that the days ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But he also knew that he was not alone. He carried the voices of the people he had met, the lessons they had shared, the trust they had given him. And he carried his own heart, open and willing to be changed. The night deepened, and the stars blazed like beacons in the sky. Kofi closed his eyes, a quiet smile on his lips. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new stories. But tonight, he rested in the knowledge that he had begun to find his place in this vast and beautiful world. Morning light filtered through the woven mats that formed the walls of Kofi's small shelter. He woke to the sounds of the village coming alive, the laughter of children, the rhythmic pounding of grain, the low hum of voices sharing the news of the day. The air smelled of smoke and earth, grounding him in the here and now. He stretched slowly, feeling the tightness in his shoulders from days spent in work that was both physical and emotional. Each task in the village fetching water, tending gardens, repairing fences, had taught him not just skill, but humility. He was no longer an outsider observing from a distance. He was part of something larger, woven into the daily life of the people he had once thought so different. Malik met him near the cooking fires, his face weathered by the sun, but calm. "How did you sleep?" Malik asked, his voice low. "Better than I expected," Kofi replied. "The ground feels like home now." Malik's lips curved into a rare smile. "That is good," he said. "Today will not be easy. There are decisions to be made." Kofi's stomach tightened. What kind of decisions? Malik's eyes searched his face. "The village council meets today. Zuri's grandfather will speak, and the elders will listen. They will decide if you are ready to stand among them as one of their own." Kofi felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. "I thought I was already part of them," he said. "You are learning their ways," Malik explained. "But trust is earned over time, not given in a single day. The council must see that your heart aligns with their own. They must know that you respect their ways and understand their struggles." Kofi nodded, the lessons of the past days echoing in his mind. "I will do what is asked of me," he said. Malik rested a hand on his shoulder. "Then you will find your place," he said. They walked together to the meeting ground, a wide circle of packed earth beneath the branches of a massive tree whose roots spread like the veins of the land itself. Villagers gathered in a circle, their eyes watchful but not unkind. Zuri stood near the front, her face composed but her eyes bright with something that looked like hope. The elder sat in the center, his staff resting across his knees. His voice carried over the crowd like the wind itself. "We gathered today to speak of trust," he began. "Trust in each other, trust in the land, trust in the journey we all walk." He turned his gaze to Kofi, the lines of his face deepening with thought. "You have walked among us," he said. "You have worked with us. You have listened to our stories and shared your own. But trust is not built on words alone." Kofi felt every eye on him, the weight of their expectations pressing into his chest. He drew a slow breath, willing his heart to slow. "I have come here seeking more than just acceptance," he said, his voice steady. "I have come to learn, to understand, to stand beside you in the struggles and joys that shape your lives." A murmur passed through the crowd. The elder's gaze did not waver. "The land has its own way of testing those who would call it home," he said. "There is a place where the river bends, where the spirits of our ancestors are said to walk. You will go there, alone, and leave an offering of thanks. If the spirits accept your gift, you will return unharmed. If they do not—" He let the words hang in the air. Kofi's heart beat faster, but he did not look away. "I understand," he said. Zuri stepped forward then, her eyes bright. "Let me go with him," she said. "He should not walk that path alone." The elder shook his head. "He must go alone," he said. "The journey is his, and his alone." Kofi turned to her, his chest tightening. "It's all right," he said softly. "This is something I have to do." She nodded, her lips pressed together, but her eyes shone with unspoken words. The villagers parted, making a path that led toward the forest at the edge of the settlement. Malik stepped up beside him, his face solemn. "Remember what you have learned," he said. "The land listens. Respect it, and it will respect you." Kofi nodded, his breath steady. He felt the weight of every lesson, every conversation, every smile, and every tear. Then he stepped forward, his feet carrying in him toward the unknown. The forest was cool beneath the canopy, shadows dancing like spirits on the ground. Kofi moved carefully, each step mindful of the path. He heard the calls of birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of the river. He felt the presence of the land not as something to conquer, but as something to honor. When he reached the bend in the river, the water shone silver in the fading light. A small clearing opened before him, marked by stones worn smooth by countless hands. Kofi knelt there, his heart open, his hands trembling. He thought of his grandmother's stories of respect, of the way she had taught him to listen for the whispers of the world. He gathered a handful of river stones, each one smooth and cool. He placed them in a circle, and in the center, he laid a small piece of cloth, woven by Zuri's mother, bright with color and life. He bowed his head, his voice soft. "I come here in peace," he said. "I seek to honor this land and its people. I ask for the wisdom to learn and the strength to protect. I give this offering with humility and hope." The river whispered around him, its voice older than memory. The wind stirred the branches overhead. For a long moment, nothing moved, and Kofi felt the weight of silence. Then a breeze lifted the cloth gently, carrying it in a small arc before it settled again in the circle. Kofi felt a warmth spread through his chest, a sense of welcome that he could not explain but knew was real. He closed his eyes, letting the feeling sink deep into his bones. He had come seeking acceptance, but he had found something more. A connection that ran deeper than words, a bond that tied him to the land itself. When he opened his eyes, the forest felt different, brighter, alive. He stood slowly, his legs steady beneath him. He turned and made his way back, each step sure, each breath filled with a quiet strength. The villagers waited at the edge of the forest, their faces alight with curiosity and hope. Zuri stood at the front, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes locked on his. Kofi stepped into the clearing, his heart open, his face calm. He held out his hands, empty but full. "The spirits have accepted my gift," he said. A murmur ran through the crowd. The elder stepped forward, his eyes bright. "Then you are one of us," he said. "From this day forward, your journey is tied to ours. Your struggles are our struggles. Your joys are our joys." Zuri rushed to his side, her smile wide and free. "Welcome home," she whispered, her hand brushing his cheek. Malik stepped forward, his expression warm but knowing. "You have walked a hard road," he said, "but the hardest roads often lead to the most beautiful places." Kofi felt his heart swell with something he had never known before: belonging. He looked around at the faces that surrounded him, the smiles, the tears, the laughter. This was no longer just a village. It was his village. That night, as the fires burned and the drums echoed through the night, Kofi sat beside Zuri and Malik, his hands steady, his heart full. He had come to learn, and he had found a home. He had come to help, and he had been helped in return. And as the stars rose high above the land, he knew that his journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new questions, new paths to walk. But for the first time in his life, he would not walk them alone. He was part of something greater, something strong and enduring, and in that moment, as the firelight danced on his face, Kofi smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning.